Welcome to the City Current Show, powered by Hagen-Botham Insurance and Financial Services.
This show focuses on sharing good news and powering the good in our community. Now here's your host, City Current CEO, Jeremy Park.
Welcome back to the City Current Show, powered by Hagen-Botham. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good. And that's why we're excited to be talking about Boundless Kids. We're honored to have with us Katherine Parker, founder of Boundless Kids, as well as Andy Bailey, CEO and founder of Boundless. How are you two doing?
Great, Jeremy. Thanks for having us.
Fantastic, dude. Good to see you. Great jacket.
Thank you. I'm excited to talk about Boundless Kids and all the amazing things you're doing. And it also ties into Boundless. And so let's start with a little bit of history and where all this started. So Katherine, give us some background on Boundless Kids.
Absolutely. So Boundless Kids grew out of the work that we were doing inside of Boundless. And maybe I will let you jump in, give the backstory of that, and then can jump into Boundless Kids.
Yeah, after working with companies, I know your listeners are a lot of business people, working with companies for 20 years. One of the limitations, or one of the greatest limitations we always kept running into, were the individuals inside of those companies not growing themselves personally at a rate fast enough to scale the organization. So said another way, if a business is going to grow 20% a year, everybody in the business has to grow, whatever grow means to the individual, at 20% a year, or it gets into a state of chaos and overwhelm. And we just saw that repeatedly happen over and over and over and over, and ceiling after ceiling after ceiling. So we created all these tools and thought processes and ways to focus on the individual, such that the individual in the business could grow themselves. We call it capacity, so grow capacity, in order to keep up with the demand inside of the organization. And then ultimately, through a transaction, brought that content into its own under the umbrella of Boundless. So at Boundless, we work directly with adults. Typically, it's somebody that's in the business world. Many times it's couples. And then that grew into families. And I'll turn it back to Katherine to talk about the growth into the family side.
So when we started this, a lot of the adults that we worked with, said, hey, how do we get our kids involved in this? How do we teach our kids at a young age the habit of thinking for themselves? How do we teach them the habit of not just goal setting and plan creation, but goal achievement? And, as most parents know, mom or dad can say something to their kid 25 times and they never listen. But when, an aunt or an uncle or a cousin say it, it's like, oh, mom and dad, listen to what Uncle Jimmy said. It's the greatest thing ever. And mom and dad are like, I've been saying that to you, for the past 3 years. But so we just took it upon ourselves to say, well, let's test that out. Let's see what that looks like. And when we first started, our focus was really on working with kids from families that had the ability to pay for our services. And as we dug into this work, our core purpose is to reveal unrealized potential in the kids that we work with. And through that, we said, we need to take this content to underserved communities, to underprivileged kids. So teaching them the habit of goal achievement, teaching them, about what it means to have a growth mindset and how to overcome challenges, and also teach them, because a lot of kids most times don't feel like a lot of their life is within their control. They're just being told what to do all the time. And so being able to teach them that there are certainly things in our life that are outside of our control, but one thing that you can control is your achieving the goals that you set for yourself. And so that's a little bit of how it got started. And I've kind of dipped into some of the work that we do.
Yeah, but I think all this makes sense where you're working with adults and the abundant mindset, increasing capacity, their growth and development. And then as parents, you're like, I want my kids to experience this too. And then you start working with the youth and then you realize, wow, this needs to be a nonprofit to be able to reach more and be able to help more. And when you talk about mindset, growth, taking ownership of your own life and career and opportunities, obviously very powerful at an early age to set forth this trajectory in life that can be boundless and limitless. And so talk about it from the process, because you do a lot. There's a structured program, and so there's online elements. So go ahead and dive into how the magic happens with Boundless Kids.
The majority of the work that we do is all online. And our system, we actually have a Boundless Kids journal that each kid will receive. And we meet with our kids 4 times a year on Zoom or Teams. And we do what we call our seasonal resets. So these are our goal setting calls. And each child is paired one-on-one with a Boundless Kids coach. So when a kid comes into our program, we assign them to a coach. This is the coach that they work with for the duration of the time that they're in our program. And one thing that is pretty interesting that we have found is, when we do these calls, it's 60 to 75 minutes, 4 times a year. And the more times than not, parents, it's rare that parents will sit down with their kid for 60, 75 minutes and only focus on, their kid that's in front of them. So we give those kids that space. In the first couple of calls we do, they're a little bit, like, why am I here? What am I doing? And then by the 3rd or 4th call, it's, let me tell you everything that's going on in my life. Here's what's going on that's good, and here's what's going on that's really bad. But during those seasonal reset calls, one-on-one with the coach, the outcome is always that the child leaves with a set of seasonal goals for themselves, and then also a step-by-step plan that's pretty detailed in the things that they need to go and do to ultimately achieve that goal.
The concepts of that all grew out of business management stuff, right? So in business, we spend time creating goals and targets and KPIs and outcomes, and then we write plans to achieve them. And then directing that energy to the individual, saying you can do the same thing for what you want your life to look like individual, and then directing it to the kid. Katherine just took it upon herself to create the content to match kind of desired look, feel, and process for a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old versus some of the work that we and we still do with adults and using the adult content.
Yeah, I think that's where the parallel is perfect, because it's like you look at all the things you're doing once again with the adults, and then matching this and making it, kid friendly, so to speak, but being able to then put it in words and phrases they would understand, but then, create the same systems that lead to success in adult life, doing it in youth, but giving them the structure that they can carry forward as they get older to be super successful too. So I think a lot of this is, awesome in terms of, okay, how do you make it easy? How do you make it digestible? But ultimately give them a tool to be really successful. Talk about then that mindset shift that starts to take place and how you get to see it with the abundant mindset, the possibilities. So by putting structure, by putting, these sort of conversations and having this one-on-one dialogue, talk about what you have a chance to see, unfold with just their growth mentally and what's possible.
We work with 2 different types of children. So again, going back to turning this into a nonprofit, we work on a buy one, give one model, essentially. So anytime a family has the ability to pay for their child to be in the program, it automatically scholarships a non-paying kid. So the goals that are set are very, very different, between each kid. We work with a kid who, when he came into the program, he was maybe 10, or around 10 years old. And he had this idea of opening up his own bakery. And he's adopted, and he and his mom really bonded over being in the kitchen together. And this started out as just a simple idea. And he's now 13 years old. He's been with us, for those 3, going on 3.5 years. And he now has an actual cookie business. So he has a website, and he is, it's kind of funny. His mom told us not long ago, he came in from school and, said, Mom, I've got to get this homework done. Then I have 3 orders of cookies that I have to, start baking and get out the door by, whatever day. But he's now learning the basics of, tracking revenue and, what are your expenses, like going to the store and keeping up with with all of those things. So that's a pretty cool story. To start it out as an idea that he shared with his coach. And then, 3.5 years later, he's actually got a business. Now, we also, again, going back to the goals are different, have kids that sometimes their goals are simply to, graduate high school or to get into the 9th grade. And then the coach that they work with, fully supports them in, again, what are the goals and what are the steps that we have to take in order to make that happen. Some of the kids that we work with, we actually do 6-week accountability calls with them. And that is nothing more than pulling up their goals, pulling up their plans, walking through the plans, and to say, I've gotten my first 3 steps done, but I haven't gotten the 4th one done. And then committing to what's next and what they'll do, and from now until the next time that we speak, to get them either back on track with their goals or to keep them moving forward.
Touch on Boundless Farms too.
So Catherine and I started looking for a place where people could come and learn and grow. So we always wanted a place. Heavy travelers historically would go to cities and do, a speech or a workshop or a deal somewhere. And that's typically been 200 plus nights a year over the last 10 years or something like that. It's a lot. So for probably 3 years, we've been looking for a place that we could purchase and begin to build a retreat type facility for people to come and spend time at. So we can stay home, sleep in our own bed, and at the same time, people can come and have a good time. So we last February-ish contracted on a place in West Tennessee, and then closed on it in October, moved in December, and we're now fully operational at the Boundless Farm. It's just boundlessfarm.com if you want to check it out. And we have a group coming in this weekend. We've had groups all year long, probably 10 different groups come in since the beginning of the year, and it allows us again to stay home and do this work that we think is really important here. And as it plays into kids, I saw you sent me an invite today for blocking off a calendar for a kid day. Yeah. We're going to start doing those this year here at the farm, where we're taking chunks of time and having people come out and do that. So working with local community, not-for-profits, with some of the kids that they have access to, and taking those groups here, doing a little bit of Boundless Kid content. We might talk about mindset or gratitude or goal setting in some way, but we'll also take them to fish. We have 10 acres of lakes. They're full of fish and trails and all kinds of stuff to do from a farm perspective, but get them outside and do some outside stuff, learn some things as well, and then, grill some hamburgers and barbecues on the back patio. So that'll be fun to dive into this year out at the farm.
All the way around, it kind of ties in terms of how do you pull all these pieces together and make it easy, both online and then obviously have the in-person experiences as opportunities as well. And so obviously Boundless Kids being, available really globally is an opportunity. Talk about how people can take the next steps. How can the community support your efforts? Obviously being a nonprofit. So how can the community help and support your efforts?
The one thing that we are really after is to make those local connections, because the majority of everything that we do is online. We work with kids in Canada. We work with kids all across the United States. We actually have a partner in Indonesia, even, that it's a school, and they go into very, very remote parts of Indonesia, pull these kids in to attend these schools, and we work with them as one of our partners. So ideally, I know Andy mentioned that we do a lot of traveling. We would like to get plugged into some of the community here, so that instead of us traveling and taking this content elsewhere, we can really begin to focus on making a big impact in our own backyard. So, ways that the community can help. So if anybody has access to another nonprofit or an organization that works with kids, whether these be schools, whether these be paying kids or non-paying kids, would love the opportunity to speak to some of those folks. They could reach out to either one of us, myself or Andy, and we can give them more information about that. But also, if anybody is looking for a place to do an offsite retreat, they can certainly use the Boundless Farm for that, whether that is for adults or, whether that's for kids.
I know you do some events too, but if there's an opportunity to speak from a stage to a group of people that need to hear a little bit of a message around mindset, that would be cool. Because we do have that kind of in a box that we can deliver to a group of people and educate them a little bit, but also at the same time about what we're doing with kids.
And obviously all of this, when you talk about the scholarships and the importance being a nonprofit for financial contributions to underwrite and provide access for more kids to take advantage of this, easy way to plug in and help as well. So mention website, where do we go for Boundless Kids? Mention again, Boundless Farm, the website there too. So where do we go to learn more and connect in and get involved?
You can go to boundlesskids.org is our website. Boundlessfarm.com is our Boundless Farm website, where you can actually see the grounds and see some of the stuff that we have to offer out here. My email address is Katherine@boundlesskids.org. Andy's email address is Andy@boundless.me.
And Andy mentioned where we can go to learn more about Boundless.
Just boundless.me. Yeah, so easy domain there.
That makes it easy. Well, Katherine, Andy, thank you for all you do to power the good. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Jeremy.
Higginbotham Insurance and Financial Services is proud to power the City Current Show. We're a people-first company that protects what matters most, the families, businesses, and trailblazers that keep our community going. As one of the nation's top independent insurance firms, Higginbotham is a single-source solution for business insurance, employee benefits, HR services, and personal insurance that's customized for you. We're here to serve you, the people you care about, and your community. Call 866-377-1959 or visit higginbotham.com.